Coming up on episode 92 of Creative Writing, I'm talking about whether or not you should pre-sell your course before it's built.
I can't go back to sleep, it's almost light. These restless thoughts have kept me up again tonight.
Hello and welcome to Creative Writing episode 92. I'm your host, Kirsten Oliphant, and this is the podcast for writers, bloggers, and creatives who want to build an online platform without being smarmy. Now, a lot of times when I listen to podcasts, the host will say something like, you can probably tell that I'm sick, and usually I can't, but I feel like it's pretty clear that I'm sick from my voice. So this is going to be maybe a shorter podcast episode just to spare you and also from sparing me. Probably by the end, it'll sound a little bit worse than it does right now. But I wanted to tackle a question that I thought was really, really good from Caitlin from inkandquills.com. And Caitlin is one of my students in Own Your List and a fellow writer. I really like her blog a lot. And she has a hedgehog, hence the quills in her name, but also writing like with a quill pen. So really good name there for her blog. Anyway, Caitlin emailed to ask kind of what I thought about pre-selling and forwarded me an email from Jenna Sword, who is someone I've seen do kind of some trainings I've done with her. I haven't bought any of her products, but have seen her, and that's SOARD, not sword as in S words. There's a little Celebrity Jeopardy reference there for you. So I want to tackle that question and really appreciate Caitlin sending it. Now, if you have any questions, please tweet them, email them, ask in the Facebook group, because they may become a podcast episode. Before we get into the main part where I talk about this, I wanted to thank our sponsor, ConvertKit. I feel like I keep finding more things to say that are great about ConvertKit, but as I'm getting ready for the Profitable Blogging Summit, it is so much easier to handle something huge like a summit or even running like a webinar or live workshop when you have ConvertKit, because you're not having to necessarily ask everybody to opt in. People who are on my list who want to register for the Profitable Blogging Summit can just click a link in my weekly emails and then get tagged, so they'll get the information. They're not going to have to go to another page and sign up again. And the people who sign up for the Profitable Blogging Summit, I can exclude them if they're not already on my list, so that they're not going to get emails they didn't ask for. They're just going to get what they wanted. And that's a little bit trickier in a lot of the email service providers. So I really love ConvertKit. If you want a free month of ConvertKit, you can use this link, which is my link for having them sponsor the show. It's creativewriting.com/ConvertKit. Now, I also, before I go in, I want to feature some reviewers. Now, if you listen to the Quick Fix the other day, I think it was Quick Fix number 8, I first introduced this, and this is, I hired somebody to read out my reviews to celebrate the people who have reviewed the podcast. And my instructions were basically choose an emotion that you feel like would be fun for that review. It probably is better if it does not match the review, and then do that. And I hired someone who's Australian. Now, just as a word, he missed my note about how to pronounce my name. So my name is actually Kirsten, rhymes with Bierston. Great way to remember it, but we're working on that. So if you do leave a review, by the time we get to episode 100, I'm going to do a giveaway where you will win entrance into all of my courses, programs, and also any of my books that I have. So go leave a review. Send me a screenshot via email or tweet me at KikiMojo with a screenshot of your review. So you may hear it read on the show, but you also may win a package of all my stuff. So there you go. By episode 100, when we get there, I will do a random drawing through random.org to win that prize.
Matthew McCarrick says, I was hooked after I listened to one episode. Kirsten Oliphant is a breath of fresh air. Creative writing offers great trainings and insightful tips, but the podcast goes beyond tips and trainings. Kirsten pulls back the curtain and shares many of her successes and failures. She is honest and authentic. This is what sets creative writing apart. Training, inspiration, transparency. She takes the fear out of writing, blogging, and list building. Highly recommend.
Wake Up Your Wife says, I love the intro music and the smooth vibe here. So much great content and encouragement. I'll definitely be back. Keep up the funk.
Okay, so let's talk about pre-selling a course. Now, last week I talked about my course and the lessons that I learned from not having it go the way I wanted to. And that launch was not a pre-sale because I had actually pre-sold Own Your List the very first time I built it, and it was called something different, but I did sell it before I finished making it. And this time I sold it after it was already made. So I have a little bit of experience in that way. I've also pre-sold a course before it's built before. And I've heard, and I guess I've done it both ways. And then I've heard a lot from both people about it. So what I'm going to do is I'm not going to tell you which way you should do it. I'm going to give you guys some advice because as much as I've read on both sides, I don't know that there's one right answer, although people like to say there is, which is typical for the internet, right? There's one way to do it. So I'm going to share with you some insights, some questions that you should ask to help you decide, so that you're clear about what we're talking about. This is kind of like pre-selling a book on Amazon, which is a really common practice. But typically when people do this, it's a lot closer. Like the book's actually done. Maybe it's at the printer if you're doing traditional publishing, or maybe you're putting the final touches on it. But people do pay for it and they get their money back if you don't deliver, but the book is supposed to be delivered. There's a certain date. So this is, a practice that's done in other areas. But pre-selling a course before it's built is basically where you are selling the course. You're actually taking money from people who want to buy the course, but you're telling them, hey, it's not done. Here's the date it will be done. And people buy. So let's talk about why you should do this, because this is never something I would have thought about had I not seen other people do it and listened to kind of some trainings on why this is or can be a good practice. So here's why you should pre-sell your course before it's built. First of all, it validates the idea. And I think this is a really huge thing. Now, I've heard some people discount it, and I'll actually share a link in the show notes about why Amy Porterfield, for example, doesn't think that's a real thing. But here's what I will say. Often, when you talk to people about what they want, and you're trying to do this research into what they want to validate your idea. It's sort of like a subliminal, subconscious type of thing that we want to say yes to things. Like you can say, here's my course idea, would you buy it? People will say yes, but then you actually sell it and they don't. So when you're pre-selling a course, it's actually getting people to put their money where their mouth is. And it actually tells you, yes, they would buy it versus people saying they would buy it and then not actually buying it, because that really is fairly common. So if you're not validating your idea well, and I don't think this is the only way you should validate your idea, by the way, maybe that's a whole other podcast episode, but I do think this is a really important step, or can be, because it tells you whether people would actually pay for it or just say they would pay for it. And that's really, really important. So it really does have them put the money where their mouth is, say, yes, I want it so much, I'm willing to pay for it before it's done. It also can get you to finish. Now, this depends on the kind of person you are, because for some people, this wouldn't work. And I'll give you an example in a little bit about somebody who didn't work very well with this. For me, this is great. It gives me a deadline and I work really well with those. I actually like to finish early. But if I have that done, then I will get it finished. Where I talk to a lot of people in the creative writing Facebook group who are building courses or working on things, and they have a hard time finishing. And this is one of those things where it's like, if you're on the hook and people have already paid you for it, you have to finish it. But some people, I think this might be like a paralyzing thing where, we all just work differently. Okay, the pressure of that might be too much for some people, and that may not be a good way for you to work. And I can't tell you if that's how you work or not. That's only something you can do. But I think it can be a good idea because it will make you finish. And really, I have created a whole course with video and everything in a week. It can be done. And it was several modules, a whole lot of video, and quality course. So I think it can be done. And if you have that date in mind, that it gets that fire under you to get it finished. It also, a third reason that you might want to pre-launch or pre-sell is it can help finance the final pieces. So as an example, I know when talking to Bjork Ostrom, who runs Food Blogger Pro and is half of the Pinch of Yum team, that they pre-sold it before it was built and used the money to build out the Food Blogger Pro membership site. So they used the money that they did in pre-sales to actually build the thing. And I bought a course, the course I bought on pre-sale, I think I bought more than one, but the one that I remember was Webinar Rockstar from Mariah Cause. And I bought that and paid for it and hadn't gotten it yet. Now, the other thing that often happens is if you're doing that, there's usually a better price. And that's kind of a good motivation for people to buy before it's built because you're actually paying less for it. So if you're going to do this, I think it's really important that you're clear. So I mentioned Webinar Rockstar, and I was about to start doing webinars when I purchased this, and I had confidence that I could do it. I just didn't know the tech. And so that's really why I purchased the course, was for the tech piece of it. I somehow missed the whole thing that it was a pre-sale, and it was really hard for me because I had my first webinar before the course was done. So I just had to figure out the tech myself, and then had to decide, like, should I ask for a refund? Do they even offer refunds? Like, should I keep it? I did end up keeping it, and I did go through the training, and it was good, solid training. It helped a little, although I'd already really done it. So, it's important to be clear, and they probably were clear. I just missed it because I was really excited. But you should make sure it's very, very clear and actually say exactly when it's going to happen. And as I mentioned before, if you are not the kind of person that this would help to finish, if this would paralyze you, and maybe you don't know yourself well enough, I think it's really good to get to know how you work. Because certain things paralyze me. If I wait to the last minute to do something, like I learned this in college, if I waited to the last night to write a paper, it would take me 8 hours. Like, I would be up all night. I would be crazy. It would not be a good paper. If I wrote it early, a couple days ahead of time, so that it was done, especially if I finished it a full 24 hours before it was due and had nothing left to do, I worked the best. I worked faster. I wasn't stressed out. And so for me, I like to have the deadline, but I like to finish early. But having a deadline really helps me. Whereas when I was redoing Own Your List, I think it took me 9 months because there was no fire under me. The people who had taken the course the first time had already taken them, and a lot of them weren't super interested. Some of them were super happy that there are all these updates, and some of them were like, oh, okay, whatever, that's fine. They didn't really, they've already kind of gone through the course. Maybe they're in a different place. And so it didn't matter to them as much. And so I didn't have that fire. I didn't have people who were like, we're waiting. And so for me, that's a great motivation. For you, it might not be. You have to know yourself. And then I think one really important thing to think about is that you need to have a good portion of this done. This is not the only way to validate. This is the last step, right? I would not do this if you don't have a concept, an outline, and even content done for this. I would not pre-sell before you've done any work, because you don't want to leave yourself in the situation of having all this money and then having no product at all, starting totally from scratch. You should really have a lot of it done, because how else are you going to sell it? If you don't even know what the modules are, if you don't know what's going to be in them, if you don't know how many videos, if you don't have that kind of information, I don't know how you would pre-sell it. So when you pre-sell before building, I would assume that you have some of the pieces of it done, at least a significant portion. Just maybe you have some things finalized, or maybe you've roughed out everything. You just haven't done the final piecing of it together. So I definitely would not pre-sell before doing any work at all. Have a good portion of it done. And I've got some really good links. One from Teachable from Hallie Gray, another from Lewis Howes, and then one from Melissa Griffin, all about how they pre-sold and how that kind of worked for them, or what they did about that. So those are reasons why you should pre-sell a course. And here are some reasons why you shouldn't. And some of these come from the email that Caitlin sent me from Jenna Sword, and I wanted to link to it, but she doesn't have it in a blog post. It was just in one of her emails from her list. And I also heard these same things in other places, so I have a couple links, one from Small Biz Daily and another from Amy Porterfield, about why you shouldn't. So here are some reasons why you should not pre-sell your course before it's built. The first is that you might not finish. And I mentioned that above, or I guess it's not above, but before, why you shouldn't, because if you are not going to finish it, if you know yourself, that's a really bad deal. And kind of tied into that is the second one, is that you could really ruin your reputation. And I actually know of a person whose name I'm not going to mention, but a good friend of mine bought into a course that was kind of like a joint venture. And so you got two things from different people. And one of the people, it was kind of like a pre-sale, and I'm not sure if it was like a course or like a coaching program, but whatever the person had promised, it had not been delivered yet. And she made so much money that she took off with her boyfriend and went to Europe. And I think eventually she came back and did the work, but she definitely did not do it when she said she was going to. And that gets around. I've heard of it. Again, I'm not going to share the name of the person with you, but this was someone I'd already kind of seen some of her stuff and been kind of like skeezed out by it. And this was just confirmation to me, but that kind of word gets around and that's going to ruin your reputation. No one's going to want to work with you. No one's going to buy your stuff and people are going to ask for refunds. So you don't want to ruin your reputation. You want to be able to finish. So you do, again, need to know if you can finish it or not, if this is really helpful. And then one of the big ones, and this is one that Jenna talked about, and also I think Amy talked about this as well in her post, that you don't have proven results if no one's gone through the course before. And I kind of want to talk about why that's a really important point, but also why it can be a moot point. The reasoning there is that if no one has gone through your course, then you don't have anyone to say like, I did it and here's what happened as a result. You don't have anyone showing kind of the transformation from point A to point B, because that's a really important point that I talked about in episode 91 about why people buy, because they're buying not just kind of the features of the course, but the benefits, the transformation that's going to occur. So if you don't have any testimonials, you don't have people telling you, because also if things aren't working, then those people can tell you, and then you can have a way to, readjust things. Now, if you're kind of like, well, who are these people if you haven't pre-sold your course? I'll get to that. Hint, it's beta people, beta course takers. But if you're pre-selling it before it's built, then you don't have any of that sort of social proof from people. And I do think that's valid. I think it's really good to have people go through your course and share the results. Now, here's where that is not necessarily the best advice. So not all courses are about that. And I think this is something that's really important. Courses right now, like the trend is to sell these courses that are going to take you to like a 5K or 6-figure whatever, and that's the transformation that you're going to see this huge increase, and people love to share those testimonials. But I know, being a course creator and being a person who talks to a lot of people in blog groups and things like that, that for every one testimonial where the person really rocked it out, there's probably like 10 people who didn't take the course, or people who tried it and it didn't work for them. Or they went through the course, but they didn't apply it, or they applied it and, maybe what their idea is just not good. Maybe they're really not great at what they're trying to do. Like I do know people who are trying to make it, as bloggers or as writers, and they're just not really very good at that. And that doesn't mean they can't get better, but you see people, I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but, sometimes people ask like, hey, I need help with my branding or my image or this, and they'll ask for help in a Facebook group, and people go and look and they're kind of like, well, it's just not very good. And they find different ways to say that. And usually people are pretty nice and constructive, but sometimes maybe it's just not your thing. So those testimonials are great, but that's not the full picture. And I think sometimes it's really misrepresenting when you share that. It's a great way to sell courses, yes, but if you're going to say it's unethical to pre-sell, I also think it can be unethical to share only those good results, because that's not the only results. And anyone who's created a course or done a program like that or done coaching, you know that if that person's not committed to really putting in the work, and if they already don't have some kind of talent or affinity for it, it's not going to take off. And I also do think, I will say this, I do think there's a kind of X factor, and people, I've mentioned this before, I don't think anyone talks about it, but it's just like the show X Factor or American Idol, when Simon Cowell would always say that they just have that it factor. I think that's a thing. And I see this from blogger friends of mine who are doing essentially the same thing, and one takes off and the other doesn't. Sometimes it's luck, but sometimes it's just that person really resonates, even if they're writing the same kinds of posts and other things. It may be a visual thing with how they look. It may be the way that they write. Maybe they do videos, and the way that they talk, there's just something about them that zings, that gets people. So when you're doing testimonials and having people go through your course, yes, it's helpful to know if things work or not. But at the same time, those are not a full picture either. So I think calling it unethical to pre-sell without those things is not fully a good thing. Plus, not all courses are about transformation, right? Okay, so I took Webinar Rockstar, and in the selling, it was talking about all the kind of XK amount of money you're going to make on your webinars. I bought it because I needed tech training. And the same thing with Facebook ads. I get the whole idea behind Facebook ads, but there's a lot of really important particulars and a lot of moving pieces that I wanted to pay for a course rather than just hear all these free trainings. I wanted someone to show me through screen share that whole power editor so you can make your ads, all that stuff. I'm not doing it because I think taking the course is going to guarantee me the money. I'm doing it because I can't figure it out myself. I'm doing it for information, not necessarily transformation. And that's the difference. So right now we're in this trend of people selling transformation in courses. But the reality is, like, if you think about a course and think about college, like, you didn't necessarily take like English 101 for transformation, although you probably took composition 101 for transformation of your writing. But a lot of courses, it was about information, not transformation. And the information might transform you and affect you to some degree. But I think we're in this world where there's all this hype about the transformation and here are the benefits. You're going to go from here to here. And that is really important. But sometimes it's just about information. And again, like information that's applied to something, because I don't think it's a good idea just to sit and like learn stuff. Although, let me just tell you, I'm a nerd. I spent an entire summer once for fun reading literary criticism in the library on J.D. Salinger. Okay, so I like information. I'm a little bit weird. I like short sales pages. I like information. I'm not sold by the transformation or the testimonials. I know I'm not alone, but I might be the minority because everybody that's talking about selling says sell the transformation, use a long sales page, all those things I don't like. So I realize fully that I'm in the minority. But the reality is you might be creating a course that's about information, okay? It may not sell as well because we like the transformation, but I don't think pre-selling matters because if I am in that case, right, I don't need a testimony. I don't need someone to go through my course to tell me whether or not I shared a whole ton of information that's going to get your email list off the ground, right? I've given a lot of information in my course. I do also think there'll be a transformation in mindset in other places. However, even if nobody has gone through my course yet, I can promise you information. I can promise you that. And I do hesitate a lot of times personally sharing the transformation and selling that because, again, I know not all those results are true. So, one of the quotes I really did like from Amy Porterfield's piece where she said, don't do this. She said that you shouldn't pre-sell and use this as a validation, but she said, build it so good they'll beg you to buy. And I think that's really good. But like, again, last week I shared about my course that didn't go as I planned. And I'll tell you that I built a pretty stinking awesome course. Like it is. And I've heard the feedback from the people in the course that are saying this. And I feel very confident in my product, but it wasn't people begging to buy. So she didn't say that's the only thing, but that was just one quote where I think that's a really good quote. But I also think, there is something to validating the idea through getting people to pay. Here's the thing to kind of think about. No matter what you're choosing, I think you need to consider putting your money where your mouth is. And that means you need to be able to give returns to people and refunds. If people take your course and don't see results or don't, learn something or feel like it was not what you promised, you should offer them a refund. I do feel like that. I think you should have this set up front. I think that's really important. And I could say though, if I went through a course, I did go through one course that I felt like was a big waste of money. I talked about that in, oh goodness, I don't know the number right now. One of the episodes, I talked about my biggest financial mistakes of 2015. So it was probably just about a year ago. And, I do wish I got a refund for the course because it was good information, but it was not how much I paid. It was definitely not worth how much the course cost. I think it's good as a course creator, you want to hear that, but you want to have this clearly defined refund policy for the people who feel like either they didn't get the transformation or it was misleading or something like that. Now, I don't think you should necessarily offer it forever. I did have a student once ask for a refund 6 months after the course, and it was a course I co-created with somebody else. And so we talked about it. And we're like, what do we do with this? Because I don't want people to be unhappy. I really don't. But 6 months after taking the course, like she could have done it like 50 times at that point, like what exactly is going on? So we kind of asked her some questions. It was very clear from her answers that she had not done the course. And that's the other thing is there are just going to be people who don't do the work. So do you refund those people? That's your choice. A lot of people will say and I've seen this in varying ways, but I just heard a sales pitch in the course. They said there's a money back guarantee, but then they qualify that and said, if you do everything that we have listed out here and you don't see, this doubling and you could show us the screenshots, then you will get your money back within 60 days. So it's like a free 60-day guarantee, but at the same time, you have to prove all this stuff. So you have to actually do the work. And a lot of course creators say that. Some people will do no strings attached. Some people will say, I want to see you do some work, because it is a little scary as a course creator to give all your stuff out there and then know that somebody could watch it in 2 days if they're binging and then ask for a refund. That is scary. Now, I think in talking to people who do this, I think the refund rate is really low. The scamming is really low, but it does happen. So you need to consider that, but you do need to put your money where your mouth is. And if you're creating something and promising something and selling something, especially if you're pre-selling, you need to return that money. And Pat Flynn just talked about that in one of the latest episodes of the Smart Passive Income, about how he refunded a course that people were happy with, but he refunded the money because he wasn't happy. And I thought that was really interesting. And I know that that shows his authenticity as a person. One other option, and this may be the best option out of all of them, is to do a beta launch. Now, a beta launch, what this might look like is selling to for a smaller group of people. And maybe it's a pre-sale, but they get the content first. Maybe they get it dripped out where everybody else is going to get it all at one time. I do recommend not giving it for free, because from my experience, when I have given people, even people who were so excited, a spot for free because I wanted a testimonial or I wanted to see if everything worked. If they have not put any stake in the game and any skin in the game by paying for it, they often don't finish it, or they often don't get back to you, or they often just sort of fail out. And like the software I'm using, I could see if people have gone through it or not. I could see the people who are motivated and those aren't. The people who I have let in the doors for free as either an affiliate or for someone to test something, they almost never do the work. And so I would recommend having their beta group pay. So you could decide whether you want to have something done and then say, okay, every week for the next 6 weeks, it'll be dripped out to you, which is kind of a good hybrid for you. But I do think the paying makes sure they're going to actually do it. Unless you're somebody like, Amy Porterfield with thousands and thousands of people, where there would be people who would jump on and want to do that. Like, I think that's just not where most of us are. And so you might have some rabid fans, but it's still, you may not get what you want from that. And then you're going to still need testimonials, and you've given your course away for free. So I would say for a beta, to have at least something done, charge way less, but be clear. To use an example, recently I launched my membership site, the Creative Writing membership. And it's a paid community, and I did a pre-launch. I did like 2 kind of tiers of the pre-launch. And I got about 30 people in. A few people right away were like, this isn't for me. And I was like, great, here's the refund. I was clear kind of about how that worked up front. And, but I have a lot of people still in there. But I realized, so I launched it right before having Piper, my 5th baby. And then Christmas happened. And then New Year's happened, which is just crazy. And now I'm in this situation where I am really struggling to get any work done at all because of my kids. Suddenly their bedtime is 2 hours later than it was. Like, they won't go to sleep. And then the baby is not sleeping regularly enough. And I don't have childcare for her at all times. So anyway, I had promised X number of things to the beta people and in the membership. And there were one big thing in particular I wasn't able to do. And then a lot of the things, like I wanted to do weekly office hours, and we're doing something called the hot seat, where it's like a group coaching call where I get on a coaching call with somebody, but there's a chat box and everybody else can watch and kind of throw in their suggestions. And it's awesome. But we haven't done that as much. I wanted to do 2 a month. Right now it's been 1 a month. The office hours have been hit or miss because I can't do live video because of my kids. And, so I actually had to go to my people and say, hey guys, I feel really bad about this, because I do. And you will, if you pre-launch something or beta launch something and it doesn't quite work to what you said, you're going to feel bad. I feel terrible that it didn't work. One of the biggest things I wanted to do, which is to have a program about launching where we would have a launch that we could all do together, and I would help run it. And maybe I would launch something, maybe not. And not everybody had to launch, but we would go through a launch process together twice a year. And that has not happened because I can't finish creating the launch thing that I have, like the whole blueprint for that. I have it kind of outlined, but I can't get it done. And so I went to them and I did a live video in the group and just said, hey, if you feel like the course doesn't, or this, membership doesn't have the value because I didn't provide these things, I want you to leave. And there's no hard feelings. Please stay in the free community. Please know that I don't want it to be weird. Okay. I want you to be able to freely leave, because here's what I'm not going to be able to do. And I said, also, like, here's what I do feel like. And I still feel like what I have given you, which is access to, anything I ever create, is what I offered my beta people. So any courses I create in the future, they get access to all the courses I have created. And we're still doing hot seats and different things. And there's a paid community that's a part of it. And so when I looked at it, it totally is worth what they're paying. But if they don't feel like it is, that doesn't matter. So I want them to be able to have a refund, but I also feel like I want them to stay, and I'm going to open it back up, but it's going to look a little different to what I offer people in the future. So with beta, that's the option, is that there's a little bit more freedom. And I know people were probably disappointed. Some of the people really wanted to do the launch thing. Nobody has left yet, so people may, and that's okay if you do. It's okay. But I had a lot of people say, no, I've gotten the value already from it. I'm so happy to be here. I think this is great. And your beta people are really going to be kind of that foundation. They're going to help you formulate that. And I did say that in the beginning, like, here's what I want to do, but you guys are going to help get to shape it. And they are, which is really cool. So I think beta might be the best option if you're trying to decide whether you should pre-launch or launch. But if you're doing beta, again, I do think you should charge some amount, and maybe it's less. I do think it should be small, or maybe you could take applications. If you don't want to charge, take applications and only choose a few people, because again, that's getting some skin in the game to make sure they actually do it and will provide you with a testimonial. So to sum up all of this actually ended up being longer than I thought, but my voice is mostly here. My show, I talk all the time about not being smarmy. So thinking about pre-selling, does it make you feel smarmy? Because if it does, then don't do it. That's the ultimate thing. If you feel gross selling something you haven't created, don't do it. Figure out another way. Do beta, build it, and then do it. But please find other ways to really, really validate what you're doing, so that you don't build something that nobody buys, because that's the worst. And I know there's some people out there, you guys are probably listening saying, that was me, I built it and nobody bought it. It happens. So do try to validate it in other ways, but you don't want to mislead people. You don't want to sully your reputation. You don't want that. But at the same time, I don't necessarily think it's unethical to pre-sell, because I think sometimes the claims made through testimonials where people have sold or done beta or whatever they did to get the testimonials of people who went through, I don't always think that's ethical. Or I don't know if ethical is the right word, but I do think it could be very misleading, I will say. So what feels right to you? And then how do you work? Like, would it work for you to pre-sell, or would you know that you would freeze up and flake out and just fail and then be miserable? And what kind of course are you creating? Does that transformation matter so much that you have to have people go through it to know? Or is it more of an informational course where it's like, either way, like, you still want people to help, say the course is great, but it's less about like, okay, getting results. Because a lot of the courses out there are about getting results, but a lot of them are just about teaching. And so if you're doing a course that's just about teaching, I mean, it's great to see transformation, but you don't need it in the same way as if you're promising people. And again, I think you should be careful with your promises. But if you're promising people that they're going to have an increase in page views, an increase in revenue, an increase of email list subscribers, if you're promising those things, then you really should have some people go through it and prove that concept. But otherwise, that may not apply to your course as much. So those are some things to think about. And my overall take on it is you can do either one well. You can do either one in a non-smarmy way, but there are some best practices. And overall, you want to be honest and genuine, have integrity, and offer people an awesome product at a price that they can afford. So there you go. I hope that answers your question and helps you figure out whether you should sell before you launch or not. You can find the show notes for this episode at creativewriting.com/092 for episode 92. And if you would like to register for the Profitable Blogging Summit, you can go to creativewriting.com/PBS17 where you can register. Now, if you're on my email list, you can register there. Just click, and then you're going to be all taken care of, so you don't have to go enter your email again. It's going to be really awesome. We've done probably half the interviews, and I can just tell you that the content is phenomenal. It will be free. The limited time sessions for free, and then you can pay for an upgrade and have lifetime access. But Overall, go register. You don't want to miss any of these sessions. They're fantastic. A big thank you to ConvertKit for sponsoring the show. Don't forget your free month of ConvertKit going to creativewriting.com/ConvertKit. Again, leave a review. You'll be entered to win a contest, and you may hear a really great Australian accent reading your review in a goofy voice. Who doesn't want that, you guys? Also, if you're not a part of our Facebook community, what is stopping you? Get in there. It's a lot of fun, and it's a great place to hang out and chat. So you can find that at creativewriting.com/community. Thank you to Jasmine Commerce of JasmineCommerceMusic.com for the music for this show. And I hope you have an inspired week.